Greetings and welcome back to Curiosities Obscura. We're thrilled to have you with us for another exciting exploration. Please don't forget to like, click the bell icon, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest adventures. Now, without further ado, let's get started. The wind rustling the leaves on a chilly October night, the faint flicker of candles lighting up carved pumpkins, and costumed figures drifting door to door in search of treats. But have you ever wondered why we dress up, carve pumpkins, or even why Halloween exists in the first place? Let's travel back in time, far beyond the days of candy and costumes, to a world of ancient rituals, mystic beliefs, and festivals that transformed over centuries to create the Halloween we know today. Halloween, as we know it, is the result of centuries of traditions that blended, adapted, and evolved from different cultures across history. To truly understand where Halloween came from, we have to look back thousands of years to a time when people lived in much closer connection with nature, and beliefs about life, death, and the spirit world were woven into daily life. Our journey begins with the Celts, a people who lived in areas we now call Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and parts of France around 2,000 years ago. The Celts had a very different calendar than we do today. Their year was divided into two main halves, the light half, or summer, and the dark half, or winter. And to mark the end of the light half of the year and the beginning of the dark half, they celebrated a festival known as Samhain, pronounced Samhain. Imagine Samhain like a massive New Year's Eve party, but with a twist. Unlike today's parties, Samhain wasn't just about celebrating. It was about connecting with the supernatural world. The Celts believed that on the night of October 31st, as Samhain began, the veil between the living and the dead grew thin, allowing spirits and supernatural beings to cross over into our world. This was an unsettling time because it meant that ghosts, fairies, and all sorts of spirits could wander the earth. To keep themselves safe, the Celts would light huge bonfires on hilltops, hoping the flames would scare away any harmful spirits. People also dressed in costumes made of animal skins or other disguises to confuse wandering spirits or avoid being recognized. This is actually one of the earliest forms of what we call dressing up on Halloween. But back then, the costumes weren't cute or funny. They were meant to protect people from the unknown, not just entertain. During Samhain, the Druids, who were like Celtic priests, storytellers, and wise people, played a significant role. The Druids would lead the ceremonies, lighting the bonfires and guiding people in performing rituals to honor their ancestors. They believed that the spirits could help with predictions for the coming year, especially with things like the harvest and the weather. People believed that during Samhain, their ancestors would return to visit their homes. They'd set out food and drink to welcome these spirits and keep them happy. The Celts felt that if their ancestors were pleased, they might be granted blessings or protection for the upcoming winter, which was often harsh and difficult to survive. As centuries passed, Celtic lands became influenced by Christianity, especially after the Roman Empire began to spread across Europe. By the 7th century, Christianity was well established in many parts of Europe, and its traditions began to blend with local pagan customs. Around this time, Pope Gregory III established All Saints' Day on November 1st. This was a day set aside to honor saints and martyrs, people who were viewed as holy within Christianity. Later, the Church also introduced All Souls' Day on November 2nd to remember all departed souls, which made October 31st the eve of a holy time, known as All Hallows Eve. Hallow being another word for holy or saintly. The traditions of Samhain, bonfires, costumes, and honoring the dead slowly merged with All Hallows Eve. However, instead of fearing the spirits of the dead, All Hallows Eve became a time to honor and pray for them. But even as Christianity became widespread, many people still held on to their older traditions, so the practices didn't disappear entirely. They just evolved over time. During the Middle Ages, people in Europe continued observing some version of All Hallows Eve. One common tradition was called souling. On All Hallows Eve, poor people would go door to door, asking for food in exchange for saying prayers for the dead relatives of those who gave them treats. Instead of candy, they were given soul cakes, a small spiced cake with a cross on top. This act of giving out food in exchange for prayers for the dead may sound familiar because it's a bit like today's trick-or-treating. In some areas, people believed that if they wore costumes or masks on All Hallows Eve, they would blend in with the roaming spirits and avoid being recognized. This idea of mumming, dressing up and going from house to house, became a popular activity in Ireland and Scotland, where people would play pranks or perform small acts in exchange for food or coins. Now, let's fast forward to the 19th century, when millions of Irish and Scottish immigrants came to the United States, bringing their Halloween customs with them. In America, Halloween became a popular celebration among communities, especially in the 1800s, when Irish immigrants fleeing the potato famine arrived in large numbers. They brought with them traditions like carving turnips into lanterns to ward off evil spirits. But in the United States, people found that pumpkins were more abundant and easier to carve, and thus the jack-o'-lantern was born. As the years went on, Halloween in America began to change, becoming more focused on community gatherings, games, and fun, rather than just superstitions or fears of ghosts. By the early 20th century, Halloween celebrations started becoming more organized. Schools and communities held parties and costume contests, and the holiday became a chance for people of all ages to come together and celebrate. Trick-or-treating as we know it didn't become a popular Halloween activity until the 1920s and 1930s. Originally, Halloween was about pranks and mischief. People would soap windows, tie doorknobs together, and play other harmless tricks. But during the Great Depression, these pranks sometimes got out of hand, so communities decided to organize safe, fun activities instead, like costume parades and family-friendly parties. By the 1950s, with the baby boom and the rise of suburban neighborhoods, trick-or-treating became a standard Halloween activity across America. Families loved the idea of dressing up their kids, sending them out to neighbors, and collecting candy instead of playing pranks. And this became the beginning of the Halloween we know today. With the influence of Hollywood and American media, Halloween has become a global sensation over the decades. Classic horror films like Halloween 1978 and Halloween-themed shows have introduced people to fun traditions like costumes and trick-or-treating. By the 1980s and 1990s, the Western version of Halloween, complete with haunted houses and costume parties, was familiar in places like the UK Canada, Japan, and Australia. In the 2000s, social media helped spread Halloween's popularity from South Korea to Brazil, leading to celebrations that incorporate local customs and traditional practices. In Mexico, for example, Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead, is celebrated on November 1st and 2nd. Families honor their loved ones with vibrant altars decorated with marigolds, candles, photographs, and favorite foods, emphasizing joyful remembrance. Ireland and Scotland, where many Halloween traditions began, celebrate with bonfires, costume parties, and games like bobbing for apples. A popular Irish treat is barmbrack, a fruitcake with hidden objects that predict the future. In Japan, cities like Tokyo host large Halloween parades, like the Kawasaki Halloween Parade, focusing on elaborate costumes, often inspired by anime and manga. The Philippines observes Undas, All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day, when families visit cemeteries to honor their ancestors, bringing candles, flowers, and food, blending faith and family into a deeply cultural tradition. So, wherever you are, Halloween and its spirit of remembrance connect with people around the world while honoring the rich histories behind each tradition. And with that, we conclude our exploration into the interesting history of Halloween. Join us in our next venture on Curiosities Obscura, quenching your thirst for curiosity as we continue to showcase the curiosities, oddities, and mysteries that shape our world. Until then, may your curiosity illuminate your path